She held her breath as the footsteps pounded across the pastor's wooden floor, each one heavy enough to shake dust from the ceiling. Men shouted her name as if they already owned it, promising what they would do when they found her. A machete scraped against the hallway wall, the blade ringing every time it struck a doorframe. She pushed herself deeper into the cold bathroom corner, barely able to move in a space so small she couldn't stretch her legs. The 6 other women around her tried not to tremble, because even the softest rustle sounded loud enough to betray them. The killers stopped right outside the door. She could hear them breathing, hear one of them mutter that he could smell Tutsis hiding in this house. Her heart hammered so violently she thought it might shake the walls. Just 2 days earlier, she had still been a college student on holiday, expecting to spend time with her family. Her father had always looked steady, even in hardship, but that morning, something shifted in his eyes. The radio had begun broadcasting names, lists of people marked for death. Roadblocks went up faster than anyone could react. Neighbors who once traded food at the market tightened their voices and refused to meet her gaze. Rumors devoured the town before the violence did. When the first screams carried across the fields, her father told her to run to a pastor he trusted. She obeyed because his voice cracked in a way she had never heard. The pastor answered the door with a face full of fear he tried to hide. He rushed her inside, peered out the window, then led her to a tiny bathroom at the back of the house. It wasn't meant for people. It was a storage closet with plumbing. When more women arrived, all fleeing the same nightmare, he pressed them in together until they stood shoulder to shoulder in the dark. He pushed a heavy dresser across the doorway to disguise the entrance and whispered that they must not make a single sound. Even their breathing had to stay shallow. The killers came almost immediately. They had seen her father's house empty and assumed she had run somewhere close. They stomped through the pastor's rooms, demanding to know if he was hiding anyone. He spoke as calmly as he could, joking with them, pretending not to be afraid. From inside the bathroom, Immaculée listened to their boots scrape the floor right on the other side of the wall. One man dragged his machete along the wood as if testing for hollow spaces. They accused the pastor of helping Tutsis escape and threatened to burn the house with him inside if they found anything suspicious. The women didn't move. They didn't breathe. They waited for the dresser to be torn away. Hours passed before the killers finally left. The pastor warned the women that they had to remain silent because the militia were circling house to house, hunting for anyone still alive. Every sound inside the bathroom became dangerous. They learned to shift their weight slowly, to cough into their palms, to hold their bodies like statues whenever footsteps approached. Days blurred into each other as they survived on scraps the pastor brought them whenever the killers weren't watching. Sometimes it was a small plate of beans, sometimes just a few potatoes. They ate slowly, knowing it might be the only food they would get for days. The air inside the bathroom became heavy with heat and sweat. Knees ached constantly from crouching. The darkness pressed against their eyes until they lost any sense of time. Immaculée prayed silently, sometimes repeating the same words for hours, using the rhythm to keep panic from overwhelming her. The killers came back again and again. Once they arrived with so many men that the floorboards vibrated under their weight. They shouted that they knew the pastor was hiding people. They overturned furniture, slammed doors, and marched toward the bathroom. One man claimed he heard movement inside the walls. The women clung to one another and waited for death to rip the door away. But the mob left without discovering them, convinced the pastor's house held nothing but old furniture. Weeks passed. The women's bodies shrank as hunger hollowed them out. The cramped room that had once felt unbearable became something they adapted to, not because it grew larger, but because survival demanded it. Immaculée used her imagination like a lifeline, picturing herself walking again, picturing sunlight touching her face. Sometimes she imagined conversations with her parents, then forced herself not to cry because even tears made noise. Outside, the genocide raged without pause. Men bragged about killings as if discussing chores. Children's cries echoed through the streets. Smoke drifted from burning homes. When the killers camped near the house, their laughter carried through the walls, cold, triumphant, merciless. Every time a voice she recognized from the neighborhood passed by, the reality deepened. These weren't strangers. These were people she had grown up beside. After more than a month, the pastor whispered that the militia had threatened him for refusing to give up names. He still risked everything to keep the women alive. He brought them a Bible and encouraged them to hold on, though he admitted he didn't know how long he could protect them. Every sound outside became a countdown she couldn't measure. By the time they reached 2 months in hiding, the women's legs barely remembered how to straighten. Immaculée's joints felt locked in place. Sleep came in short bursts, interrupted by nightmares that were sometimes quieter than the reality outside. She felt the weight of her family's absence. She feared the truth she knew waited beyond the bathroom door. 91 days after she entered the tiny room, the sounds outside the house changed. Gunfire echoed from farther away, not closer. The pastor whispered the first hopeful words she had heard in months. Forces opposing the killers were moving through the region. The killers were retreating. The threat was weakening. One morning he finally opened the bathroom door fully, and sunlight flooded in so sharply that the women winced as if it burned. Immaculée tried to stand and nearly collapsed. Her legs trembled violently, unsure how to hold her weight. The hallway looked impossibly wide compared to the bathroom. As she stepped outside the house, she saw the destruction that had swallowed her country. Burned homes, bodies abandoned in fields, silence where whole families once lived. She searched for her parents and brothers, clinging to the thin hope they had survived. She learned slowly, piece by piece, that almost all of them were gone. Grief hit her with a force stronger than hunger or fear ever had, but she did not break. She had lived 91 days in a space smaller than a closet, hunted every hour, surviving on a will she didn't know she possessed. She carried the memory of the dead with her, determined that the world would know what happened, determined that her survival would not be silent. Thank you for listening to Horrifying Survival Stories. Subscribe for more stories of those who faced the impossible and lived.